Hello, everyone, and welcome to the March presentation of RELO Andes webinars. For those of you who are not familiar with RELO Andes, it is the Regional English Language Office, and we are broadcasting to you from the United States Embassy in Lima, Peru. The RELO Andes office is in charge of all things having to do with English language programming throughout Spanish-speaking South America. So my name is Maggie Steingraber. I am an English language fellow who is based here in Lima. I am the host and coordinator for these webinars, so if you've been emailing with any questions, I'm the one who responds. At the end of this webinar, if you have any further questions and you respond to the confirmation email you got, I will be the one to respond to you, and I am happy to receive any questions or feedback that you have. All right, so today's webinar will be presented by Daniel. Daniel is a fellow who is in La Paz, Mexico. Daniel, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Daniel.
Okay.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're going to talk about?
Thank you, Maggie. My name is Daniel Hirsch, and I am currently an English language fellow working in La Paz, Mexico, which is located in Baja California Sur, a beautiful place where the desert meets the sea. And today I'm going to be presenting a workshop for you, all of you listeners around the world and all of you participants, about grammar, goof-ups, and how to fix them once and for all. Originally, this idea came from just working as an ESL and EFL teacher for the last 17 years around the world, and seeing that a lot of people really love speaking English and doing things in English and conversing in English, but often feel a little bit of trouble or don't feel very confident when they start to get into grammar and the situations that involve grammar. So I wanted to kind of lighten the load and make you feel more comfortable. Therefore, I found some common mistakes that I've seen over time, and I put that together as a presentation for you today to fix those grammar goof-ups, those mistakes, once and for all.
All right. And you can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay. I currently work, as I said, in Mexico at the Secretaría de Educación Pública, the Public Education Secretariat in La Paz, Baja California Sur. I mainly do teacher trainings for more than 260 teachers in the state, as well as mentoring new teachers in the state of Baja California Sur. So this is supported by the Department of State of the United States of America and the English language programs, which you can find more information online. If you just type in English language programs, you'll find a wealth of information. So why do we study grammar? Let's begin. Well, a lot of people study grammar to understand how a language works. They want to know the ins and outs of a language, and they feel that grammar is a good place to go when they're feeling they have questions or they want something to be resolved or they have some kind of difficulty, and they try to look through grammar books or ask friends or go on the internet to find answers. So we also study grammar to communicate effectively with others. We feel that the more grammar that we know and the better that we feel using that grammar, the better we can communicate with others, be it in writing or reading or speaking. But mainly we're going to focus today on communication, speaking, and also how you can improve a little bit of your writing with these grammar tips. A lot of people want to study grammar because they want to sound intelligent in the foreign language. They feel like in their native language they're pretty strong and they can speak properly and they can have conversations on a variety of topics. But when it comes to the foreign language, they get scared or they get nervous or they feel their grammar isn't being understood properly and that people don't understand them. Therefore, they want to sound better or more intelligent when speaking the foreign language, in this case English. Also, a lot of us here are teachers that are participating in this webinar. So we want to be able to teach our students how to use correct grammar and how grammar could be used in the classroom. And this is another reason I decided to do the webinar, to really disseminate, give this information worldwide that students will learn from their teachers, hopefully the ones that are listening right now. And some people just like to study grammar. It's an interest. They really just enjoy studying the ins and outs of grammar and how it's used and how to improve their grammar. There are many other reasons I'm sure that you have. So think about the reasons why you're here today, and let's begin. So there's something called baby talk, and this is what happens when you're a very small child in any language and you're starting to use the language for the first time. We don't always say everything correctly because we obviously don't have the experience or the background knowledge yet of a language. So we might say something like, I went into the store and mommy buyed me lots of candies. Although anyone hearing this at any level would say, okay, there are a few grammatical mistakes here, but at the same time, it's an understandable sentence. So I'd just like to do a hand raise of how many people think that this sentence, if it was said to them, they would understand the meaning.
So far, we are at 40%, up to 50% now, say that they would understand it.
Okay, so that's good. So basically, when that type of, I'm going to go back, when you hear that kind of a sentence, we know that it should be, I went to the store and mommy bought me a lot of candy. But they're using the incorrect verb tenses because they're not sure how to form the sentence. So an adult might say to them, oh, mommy went to the store and bought you lots of candy? How nice. And they'll say, yeah, mommy bought me lots of candies. And you'll say, oh, mommy bought you, until the point where it becomes repetitive that the child says, I guess it's not buyed, it's bought. And that's how they learn the language naturally. It's a natural way of learning the grammar. Unfortunately, as foreign language learners, we don't always have someone standing next to us correcting our usage, or even if we do, they might not correct our usage because they might think that we might get insulted, we might have our feelings get hurt, we might be unaware, so therefore they don't want to try to push us too hard. So we don't have the advantage that children have to make these mistakes and have someone correct us all the time. So hopefully today's seminar is going to help you to feel more comfortable correcting your own grammar mistakes and moving forward. So how do we learn incorrect grammar in a foreign language? Well, like I just mentioned, we're not corrected by anyone, so we continuously use the same grammatical mistakes over and over again, especially in our speaking and writing, and no one corrects us. And that could be a very big problem because it becomes fossilized, and we keep using the language over and over again without anyone correcting us. Sometimes our teachers, they may not use correct grammar, even if they are native speakers. They might be using a colloquial speech or dialect, or they might be using their own learned improper grammar, and that could be passed on to us. Our peers might be using incorrect grammar, especially young people. When they speak to each other, they definitely drop certain words or drop certain adjectives, or they change the language because language is always changing. And we might hear our peers speaking that way when we're, especially in a younger age, learning grammar, and then we start to use that grammar incorrectly in a natural process. As I mentioned before, fossilized mistakes, so mistakes that we make over and over again and no one has ever corrected us, so in our mind it is correct. No matter how much we might hear it differently, in our mind we continuously use the incorrect grammar. So this is just a video. We're not going to watch it, but I'd like you to take a screenshot or take a picture or write down this YouTube website, and just look up Does Grammar Matter? It's part of the TED Ed series by Andrea Kalode, and you can take a look at this video at another time. It's about a 5 to 6 minute video that explains why grammar matters and how over time grammar has changed language. So I'll just give you about 10 seconds to write that the Does Grammar Matter TED Ed down, and you'll be able to enjoy that video later on during the evening or morning or day, wherever you're at. So I'm going to take my first poll here and look at the sentence, and it says, I don't know where is my bag. If you think the sentence is correct grammatically, please, I'd like you to vote now.
We'll share the results. 15% said yes, 85% said no.
Okay. So it's interesting. I don't know where is my bag. If this sentence was divided into two, as in, I don't know, period, where is my bag, question mark, then the sentence would be correct. But since we don't have any punctuation with periods or the question marks after there, I don't know where is my bag is an incorrect sentence. So I'm going to change the slide, and let's take a look at it. So the verb comes at the end of the sentence in English, meaning I don't know where my bag is, or I can't find my bag. I wonder where it is. Or my bag is missing. Where do you think it is? As you notice here, the verb is, or to be, is at the end of the sentence. Often people make this mistake because they translate from their own native languages and they say, I don't know where is my bag, which sounds totally appropriate in many languages, including Spanish and many other foreign languages, but in English it really is not grammatically correct. If you want to avoid the verb altogether, you can simply just say a sentence like this. Can you help me find my bag, my missing bag? and then you avoided the is verb altogether. Not that I'm suggesting you do that every time, but if you get confused, you could always switch the sentence around and avoid the verb. So that's just one example of a correction that we can correct right now, where we have the verb at the end of the sentence. It doesn't happen all of the time, but in more cases than not, it does happen that way. Okay? Now, let's take a look at this. This is something very confusing for a lot of non-native speakers, and something that native speakers find very naturally because we've been accustomed to using these types of verbs. But let's take a look at the difference between see, look, and watch. If you're confused by these three verbs and how to use them, I'd like to do a poll and see how many people are confused of how to use these verbs properly.
A lot of people are saying that sometimes it's not quite clear. It sounds like there's a lot of confusion on what the difference is between those three words. See is receptive, is what one person says. See is active, look is passive, watch is to observe.
Okay, these are all important notes that you're saying here, and important points.
See is passive, see is natural. We see everything that we look at specific targets, and we watch a program or a movie. See is a general ability.
Okay, those are great examples. Let me reveal the answer to you here. So as some of you have mentioned already, see is more general. We see a friend for coffee, we go and meet them, and we see the sky up, and we see if it's raining outside. We look out our window in the morning. We see how the weather is. We see if something is wrong or right on a paper when we're correcting it. Look is more specific. We say to someone, hey, could you look at my essay and see that if there's any mistakes there? Let's look at it together. Or they say, hey, let's go look at what's happening across the street. I think I heard an accident. Let's go look and see what's happening. Now, watch is something that's in progress. You watch a movie, the movie continues. You watch a baseball game or a football game or a soccer game, and it's something that's continuously happening. So if you can remember these see, look, and watch, I'm going to show you a really great picture that I got off the internet that might make it even more clear. So we have see, look, and watch, and this came from the English Student. You can find this the EnglishStudent.com on the internet. And let's take a look at what's happening in this picture. We see a house with a burglar inside. A burglar is a thief, someone that's stealing something. He's not supposed to be in there. And we have three neighbors. And let's see which neighbors are the good neighbors and which neighbors might not be such great neighbors to have. So there's a girl on the bicycle, and she says, I see a burglar in Mrs. Lee's house. And she looks concerned. You know, she's seeing that. So she is generally seeing the situation, what's going on. And then it says, come and look. There's a burglar in Mrs. Lee's house. And this neighbor is sweating. She's very upset. And we'll go back to look, and we'll see that's very specific. She sees specifically the situation. Then we have a man, and he says, interesting. I'm going to watch him while I enjoy my coffee. So he's really probably not the neighbor that you'd want to have. You probably would want to have the first two neighbors that are really concerned about what's going on in the house. The third one is going to use it kind of like a show, or something that's going on kind of passively. He's going to have his coffee and he's going to watch the situation as his neighbor's house gets robbed or burglarized. So you can use these kind of charts in your classroom or to remind you of how to use see, look, and watch. And they're easily printed offline, and then you could definitely share these with your students or anyone else that's studying English with you. Is this make it a little more clear? I'd like to have a poll on that. If this made it more clear, having a graphic and showing examples.
We can do a hand raising. So raise your hand. Raise your hand if the difference between see, look, and watch is clearer after seeing the graphic. Oh, yep. Looks like there's a very definite yes. So we are at about 60%, going up to 65. Yeah, looks like it was much clearer.
That's great. So all of these things that will help you, and of course using the language more and using real-world examples are going to help you every time you're studying new grammatical terms or topics. Okay, I'd like you just to say these words out loud. I can't hear you, but you can hear me. So I'm going to say the word, and I'd like you to repeat it. Posted, played, added, worked. Okay, I'm sure you repeated that at home or wherever you are, school. We're going to take a look at the ED rule here. A lot of people get confused with their verb tenses, especially in the past tense, especially when verbs are irregular. They get a little bit tripped up But these are not really irregular verbs here. These are words that end in a T or a D. For example, post ends in a T. So when a verb ends in a T in its regular form, we need to make the ED sound at the end. So post becomes posted. Post, posted. So you make that ed sound. It's like the name of a man, Ed, for Edward. When you have a word with add, you add the D to the end. So you read it as add, and then in the past tense, added. So you have post and you have posted. And there's several other words that you could do with this if you just think about any words that end in T or D. For example, the word subtract ends in a T, so we must make that ED sound. Subtracted, or to take away, the opposite of added. Okay, if you wanted to, not all of them are going to do this, but about 98% of verbs that end in a T or a D, they will make these ed sounds. So that's just a simple rule that you can follow. When you look at the verb in its form, the regular verb form with a T or a D ending, as in post or add, you make that ED sound. Just a hand raising if this became a little bit clearer, or maybe you were having trouble before and now it's become clearer how to use the T and D rule.
Yep, about 50% of the people
Okay, great.
say that it's clear.
So what I'd like you to do for homework is to list a bunch of verbs that have the T and the D sound, and then add the ED sound at the end, and see if they follow this rule with the ed, the posted, added, subtracted, breaded sound. That'll be your homework tonight. Okay? Now, a lot of people make this mistake where they'll say, did you went to the party last night? Did you ate the tacos last night? They often want to put the past tense verb in the first do form of a word. So when you're asking a do or does question, you have to remember this mnemonic. Did does all the work in a question. So the main verb can remain in the present tense because did does all the work in forming the tense for a question. So did you go to the party last night? Not did you went to the party last night. Did you eat the tacos? Not did you ate the tacos. Did you like the seminar? And not did you liked the seminar. So if you remember that did does all of the work, you'll probably be able to remember that it's did and then the tense in the regular form or the present form, as in go. So did you go to the party last night is correct, not did you went to the party. This is often confused because I think people feel since there's a past tense verb that the rest of the sentence has to all be in past tense. And obviously that's not the case here. So be careful when using these and just remember that did does all the work. Here's a few more examples. You can follow these formulas to help you. So do you like to eat tacos? Of course, I'm in Mexico, so that's a definite yes. So you have a present tense plus a present tense, and that always will equal the present tense. Did you eat many tacos last night? So you have the past tense plus the present tense, and that equals the past tense. So if you're mathematical or your students like to solve problems, you can put this up as a guide in the classroom or hand it out, and they definitely can remember the formula of present, 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 or past, present, past. Okay, now I'd like to take a poll about this sentence in particular. Let's make a photo. So I think Maggie has a poll prepared for you.
It is up now. So let's make a photo. Is this sentence correct? Share the results. 49% say yes, and 51% say no.
Interesting. Okay, here we go. This sentence does make sense, and it is correct if you are actually talking about making a photo in a laboratory or a dark room, like the man to the right. He is actually making a photo. He has taken a photo, and he is producing the photo using the chemicals to produce that photo. So that is actually correct to say, let's make a photo. If you are working in a dark room, making an actual photo with chemicals. But this is a grammar goof-up, because actually you're trying to say, let's take a photo. So let's take a photo is the correct form of what the people are doing on the right. In fact, these people are more than taking photos, they are taking a selfie. And You don't hear many young people say, let's make a selfie, because they have been exposed to hearing the words, let's take a selfie. And there's always even a very popular song a few years ago say, let me take a selfie, or let me take a selfie. And it was a kind of an annoying but popular song. And people learned how to say, let's take a selfie, instead of let's make a selfie, by that song. Therefore, when you're using the word photo, it's the same idea. It's let's take a photo. That means let's take a picture together. Let's take a photo together. Not let's make a photo, unless you are actually talking about working in a dark room and making a photo using chemicals and things like that. A much longer process. How many people, I would like to have a hand raise of, think that this actually was a grammar goof-up that they used to do, and now they feel that they have corrected it? How many people feel that they will not make the mistake of saying, let's make a photo, and they will say, let's take a photo from now on?
30%.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll review this again, and it'll be 100%, so that you can say, let's take a photo, instead of let's make a photo. Thank you. Okay, as often people get confused with this as well, using adjectives and nouns. And they'll say things like, oh, you know, that man is very fun, or my class was very funny today. So if you say to someone, my class was very funny, you would think that maybe the teacher told a lot of jokes, or maybe a clown showed up and made everyone laugh. So if you can remember this sentence, a funny man who tells lots of jokes always has more fun, you can clearly see that funny is used as an adjective. It describes the man. What kind of man is he? He's a funny man. And then we use the other fun as a noun. So it's a person, place, thing, or an idea. So the jokes make him have more fun always. Often people also say this too. They say, oh, studying grammar is bored, or I'm boring studying grammar. So although you could say that, it's not really correct, because it means that you're a boring person. So what you're trying to say is that studying grammar could be boring. I hope you don't say that after this presentation, but you could say that. But actually, if you remember this sentence, only boring people get bored easily. You could see that what kind of people are they? They are boring people. And how do they get, or how do they act, or how do they feel? They feel bored. So you say, oh, I feel really bored. But you don't say you're a boring person, because that would mean it's a person with no personality. They don't go out of the house. They don't have any interests. And although you might be a boring person, we hope that you would be a bored person once in a while and not a boring person all of the time. So if you can remember these two sentences, I think it will help you a lot learning the adjectives. So we have a quick rule about comparatives and superlatives. The general rule to follow about this is to look at the number of syllables in the adjective to tell how to correctly form the comparative and superlative. And I'm going to give you an example here. So the syllable is nice, has one syllable, nice. To make it comparative, you say nicer, two syllables. To make it the superlative, or the highest form, it's the nicest, three syllables. Pretty, two syllables. Prettier, three syllables. The most pretty, or the prettiest, well, that is four syllables. So it goes in order. Three syllables, beautiful, then more beautiful, and then the most beautiful, five. So if you just follow the order of 1, 2, 3, or 2, 3, 4, or 3, 4, 5, it will help you when using these kinds of words and not say, she is the most nicest person I've ever met, which often people make the mistake, or they'll say, oh, she is the most pretty person ever. So we can't use it like that. You have to follow this formula. And once the presentation is finished, this webinar is finished, you'll have access to this as a reminder. Okay, so versus the word to. So I've spent a lot of time in Finland, and it is a very cold place. You could describe Finland as saying, it is so cold in Finland in the winter. Now, if you were to say, it is too cold in Finland in the winter, so and to mean two very different things. So does anyone know, or by hand raising, could you say if you feel that there's a difference between so cold and too cold? How many people think that it's very different to say so cold and too cold? Okay.
About 25%. 30
okay.
now.
Okay, great. So let me teach you the difference. When you use the word so, you're saying it's very cold. For example, it's so cold in Finland. It's a lot. You're able to handle it. It's bearable. It is very, very cold, but you're able to survive. Now, if you were to say it is too cold, that means it would be too much for you. You're not able to handle the cold. It is unbearable. It's often when people say, I love you so much. If they say to you, I love you too much, you might need to have some warning signs there. They might be obsessed with you, or they might come after you as a stalker. So using the word so is a little bit lighter than using the word too. Too indicates that it's over the top. It's way too much. It's not able to be controlled. So you could say something like, I like the Finnish winter so much. Maybe you enjoy being outdoors and skiing and doing really fun winter activities like ice skating. But if you say, I like the Finnish winters too much, to a native speaker, it really wouldn't make sense. It means it would be you're not able to handle the Finnish winters, but then you're saying that you like them. So that might be a confusing point for a native speaker. So I just would like to see a show of hands of how many people feel that this makes more sense now. You understand this more than you did before using the word so and to.
Yep, about 50%.
Okay, good. So this takes a little bit of practice, and you can look up many examples online. Okay, here's another common grammar goof up when people say, wait me. Well, they say this because they're probably translating in their own language. Like in Spanish, you would be able to say, wait me. But the actual way to say this would be, wait for me. So I will be done with this assignment in 2 minutes. I want to go with you to eat. Wait for me. So try to avoid saying, wait me. Wait me could be used in other forms or other variations. For example, someone says, I think that you are the one that stole all of the money. You say, wait, me? With a question mark? I stole all the money? No, it wasn't me. But if you're trying to just to say you want someone to wait for you, you have to use the word wait for me. So it's just something that you have to remember and try to use that instead of saying wait me. Because when you say wait me, it doesn't really mean wait for me. It means you're surprised about something. Wait, me? No, not me, you, for example. Okay? So here's another common grammar goof up. But people often say, thanks God, this is almost finished. Or thanks God, I'm not sick anymore. Thanks God, I was able to find the answer. But actually, that's not correct. The correct usage is thank God. Thank God that we are almost finished. Or thank God I'm not sick anymore. Or thank God you came in time to help me with this project. So try to avoid the grammar goof up of thanks God and use thank God. But thanks to you, I have learned a lot about grammar and how to use it and teach it. As participants, you're supposed to say that to me. Thank you. And I say to you, thank you for being such great participants. On the next slide, I have some useful resources that you have available. We have a grammar book. We have a couple of websites that will help you with your writing and grammar, and also general grammar and usage. So if you could take a screenshot of that or just download the presentation later, you're going to be able to get more help once I'm not here to help you anymore. And that's the final slide of my presentation. So I thank you for participating and being here, and hopefully you've learned something new about grammar and how to use it. And practice does make perfect, so I hope that you'll be able to put what you learned today into practice in your conversations, in your classrooms, in your writing, and when speaking with native and non-native speakers. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. We have a couple of questions. One is going back to the so versus to, and the question was that to has a negative meaning as well, doesn't it?
Yes, to can have a negative meaning. I mean, not always, but there is a negative connotation when you say to, because like I said, you're not able to handle it, it's unbearable, it's too much, it's over the top. So yes, it could have a negative meaning as well, very much so.
And going back to the past tense, the ed, the pronunciation, there was a question on if there's any verbs that do not follow that ed ending rule, or which verbs do not follow that rule, if there's any exceptions.
Well, yes. There are a couple of exceptions, but they're very rare, and they would be exceptions of verbs that don't end in T or D in their regular form. So let me just think of a couple. Like the word go would be went. You wouldn't say wented, for example. I know that you're asking if there's exceptions to the T and D only rule, and I'm trying to think of a couple right now, and I can't really think of. Maggie, can you think of any that would end in not make the ED sound?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Let me think about that one. No, there's very few, but I will think, if you have a few more questions, let me think of a couple, if I could think of
Yeah,
any that end in E or D and don't make the ED sound.
sure. There was another question from David Arturo who wants to know, is it the same to say it is raining or it is rainy?
Okay, it is raining would be the actual action right now. You look outside and rain is coming down. It's falling. You can see it. It is raining describes just the weather in general. It's rainy. So yes, although raining and rainy are very similar, the raining would be actually you're seeing it coming down and you're feeling it most likely and you're observing it, where it is rainy is just the general weather phenomenon, like it is sunny, it is rainy, it is snowy. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to be seeing it or witnessing it yourself. You could go to the news and see it on the news. It says, oh, it'll be rainy tomorrow, ending in NY, but it is raining is something that most likely you are observing yourself.
And there was a question from Gabby on how to correct your students' mistakes when they make these grammar errors.
That's a great question. I mean, I want to go back to the beginning where we have the baby talk, where the mom or the family member would say, actually, they would say, oh, you went to the store? Oh, you bought the candy? And they're correcting it very naturally. So not to say to the student, well, the past tense of go is went, and you said wented. That is incorrect. That really makes the students feel kind of self-confident or self-conscious, and it also makes them feel a little bit sad and maybe upset, and they don't want to study anymore. They don't want to speak English. So doing a correction should be very natural. When you hear the correction, you naturally correct what they said was incorrect, and you move forward from there, and hopefully they catch it. If they don't catch it, you could do a teaching point to the entire class, make it a teachable moment. Say, I hear a lot of people saying wented, but let's look at the form again. It's actually went. Instead of just pointing out to the one person making the mistake, maybe more people would make that mistake, but you're not sure, so just make it a teachable moment and teach it to the entire class, and then just do the correction naturally.
All right, and there's another question on the comparatives and superlatives of, is it acceptable to say the most pretty? Because I always learned she is the prettiest. Are both correct?
Uh-huh.
That's from
Well,
Raquel.
you could, if you have a group of girls or a group of guys or a group of flowers or a group of animals together and you want to say that they are the most pretty, she is the most pretty of all of the girls in the class. Or this rose is the most pretty of all of the roses. It's totally acceptable to say that. But you could also very much easily say the prettiest. It is the prettiest rose. She is the prettiest girl. So that's how you differentiate the two. When you're talking about more of a group setting, you could use most pretty, and the prettiest would be that one out of every single person or every single thing that you're looking at. But they are interchangeable, and it really depends on the context and what comes before and after those actual adjectives that would change it.
All right, and Antonieta has a question on, I know we cannot say wait me, but can I say buy me?
Can I say buy me?
Uh-huh.
What do you mean by that? By wait, buy me, or
I guess
can
buy
you?
me, like buy me something, like cómprame.
Oh, buy me.
No.
Buy me would mean that you were selling yourself. So maybe you're in an auction and you're selling a service, you're selling house cleaning, and you say, buy me, buy me, buy me. That's the only time that you would be able to use buy me, actually. So no, you would say it buy it for me, or buy me the ice cream cone, or buy my house from me, or buy my piece of land from me. Mm-hmm.
And this one is in terms of teaching. Do you recommend to teach grammar structures first? I think in terms of
It
presenting and
depends on,
content.
it depends on the level of the student, and it also depends on what you're teaching around that. If it's just a pure grammar class, then that's a hard answer. But what I would say is that when you're teaching any foreign language, you should teach the grammar as naturally as possible by using lots of examples of how the language works. If that's showing television programs, watching YouTube videos, speaking with them, having the students go and interview native or near native speakers, or having them read language, I think that the most important thing is to teach the grammar as naturally as possible. Yeah.
And we have quite a few questions on error correction. The first one is from Jose Luis that is, what is the difference between an error and a mistake?
I believe that there's really no difference. Those are interchangeable words. You can make an error, you can make a mistake. Often people will say that a mistake is a little more purposeful, that you make a mistake but you kind of knew that you might do that, and an error is a little more natural, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I think error and mistakes are interchangeable words, in my opinion, when talking about grammar errors or grammar mistakes. And the great news is that you can fix both. You can correct both.
Is it a good idea to, when correcting a mistake, to repeat the student's mistake and then correct it?
In the sense like, oh, you went into the store? No, it's you went to the store? No, because that wouldn't be a very natural process. I think it's much better to naturally say, oh, you went to the store last night? What did you buy? Oh, you ate tacos for dinner? Instead of saying, oh, it's not ated tacos, it's ate tacos. No, because that, once again, it makes the students feel self-conscious, and they might not really be interested in studying much more English if you constantly correct every single error. You should look for really common errors, correct those first as a class or with the student that you're working with, and then move forward doing very particular errors with certain students or the entire class.
All right, Daniel, now you're becoming the grammar doctor because we have a few questions here. The first one
Okay, I did
is...
find one, Maggie, I did find an example of the
Yes.
D and the D endings. For example, the word send, we do not say sended, we just say sent, so that's an exception to the rule. Also the word lend, I lend my book to my friend, you don't say lended, you say I lent my book to my friend. So those are just two examples with that D ending that would not take the ED form.
Great, thank you.
Also, another one would be, sorry, one more is cost. It costs $5. You don't say it costed $5. You would just say it costs $5. Past tense is cost. It costs present, it costs past tense, not costed. That's another example. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Margarita has a question on how can you help your students to remember to add the S to the verbs in the present for he, she, and it?
Okay, that's a really nice one. And actually, I took that slide out, but I was going to include it. Let me just tell you the sentence that I created. And it's, Sam does everything himself. So you have the Sam, if the S, does has an S at the end. So if you can remember that Sam does everything himself, Sam has no friends. He's always doing everything by himself. You can remember that Sam is singular. Sam, singular. Does is singular. D-O-E-S. He goes, she goes, Sam goes. So you might want to write that in your classroom, the word Sam and does. Sam goes. Sam eats. And you can remember the S for Sam is singular. That's also an S word. So you have Sam, does, singular.
All right. We have a question from Leticia of what is more correct, write me or write to me?
Write me is not correct. It doesn't really mean anything in English. Write me, unless it's very informal and you say, you finish the text message and you want someone to say, write me back or return my message. So you could say, write me with an exclamation point, or write me, meaning write back, but the actual term would be write back to me, or return my message or whatever, or write back to me is the actual form, sorry. So I would say write back to me instead of just saying write me. Write me is kind of like a command form, and it could be thought of as a little bit rude and a little bit informal. So if it's with a friend, you could say, hey, write me sometime, call me, write me. But it's more formal to say write to me or write me back.
And is wait by me the same as wait with me?
Wait by me would indicate that you'd want the person to stand next to you or around you. And what was the other one? Wait
with me.
Wait with me would also be the same, but you don't have to necessarily be next to the person. Maybe you could say, hey, wait with me until my bus comes, but you don't have to necessarily be very close. You could be waiting, a few feet away or a few meters away. But wait by me with something you would use maybe with your child. You want them to be right next to you, holding your hand, being next to you the whole time so they don't get lost. So that's what I would say the difference between wait by me and wait with me would be.
And do you know any suggestions on where to find more information on collocations?
Collocations, I would go back to here. If you look at those resources, if they're still on the screen, they are, right, Maggie?
Yes, yes, they are.
The useful resources, like Azar Grammar book is kind of like a Bible of grammar, and if you would look for that online, they also sell it in book form. I'm sure you're going to be able to find a lot of collocations in that one. Also, the Blue Book of Grammar and Punctuation, or if you just type into Google examples of collocations and how to use them, you're going to find a lot of information online.
And if you could give an explanation on the difference between make and do.
Ooh, that's getting a little complicated. Well, besides the point, well, I can give a very simple explanation. There's a lot of verbs that use the word make. For example, make dinner. You don't say do dinner, because that would indicate that it would sound very odd if someone said, hey, let's do dinner. And, well, in an informal situation, you could say that, like, hey, let's have dinner together. Let's go out and have dinner together. Let's do dinner sometime. Or let's do brunch, or let's do breakfast. But make would be the actual action of making the dinner, not having the dinner. So you make your dinner at night, or you make your breakfast in the morning would be creating it. Where do dinner would be, let's go out and have dinner together and chat and catch up and have a good time. That's just one example of the difference between make and do. But for example, you do your homework. You don't make your homework. Make your homework means you create your homework. So you're the teacher, you're making the homework for your students, but your students actually do the homework. So that would be another example with make and do. But there's lots of examples. So I would refer to the difference online of make and do and look at the specific examples that come up and then try to memorize those examples because there's so many.
All right, this one's a little long, but here we go. It's from Margarita. She says, lay and lie are commonly used incorrectly by native speakers. What do you do to teach students the correct way, but clarifying that they will hear it wrong?
Yeah, that is a common mistake that native speakers make because we often use lay and lie interchangeably, even if it's incorrect. The best thing would be to do is to look up very specific examples that you can find either in a grammar book or in natural speech when you watch a TV show in English or a movie in English, because most likely the way that they're using it in a movie or a TV show would be the correct form. And I would use those examples with the class and try to correct any errors that they're making. But in the really big realm of grammar, lay and lie, since people do use it incorrectly, and there's so many exceptions and so many ways that British speakers might say it compared to a US speaker, compared to an Australian speaker, it would really have to depend on the exact example, how to use it, and the situation that you're using it in. But I would definitely just go to movies and videos online to see where you could find a very specific example of how to use it correctly.
All right, we have another question going back to the past tense on what is the correct pronunciation of the verb exercise in the simple past. Does that belong to the T or the D ending?
Well, exercise, it ends in an E. So actually, it's exercised. It has a D ending. And there's no T or D, so this is another exception to the rule because you're going to say exercise in the present and exercised in the past, but you're not going to say exercised. And you're not going to, so that actually doesn't follow the T or D exact rule. It's a regular form ending in an E. So that's why you would say exercised. You wouldn't say exercised. You would not make the ED sound in that one.
All right, there's a question here on the correct use of the word hope.
Okay.
I think in terms of when you would use, maybe from the translation from Spanish and how it is used.
So you can say something like this: I hope it's not going to rain tomorrow because I'm going to be going to the beach. I hope that you can come to my party on Saturday because it's going to be very fun. Or I hope that you feel better soon. So you're using this form in something that you are wishing that you don't know what might happen, but you're really wishing that it won't rain tomorrow, or that you're really wishing that someone will come to your party because it's going to be very fun. So that's how you use the word hope. You can also say, I have hope for the future. I really believe that something good will happen in the future, so I really am hopeful. So I have hope for the future. Mm-hmm. Great.
Oh,
Well, I hope,
this is a personal question for you. What
yeah.
do you like about teaching grammar personally, you?
Well, what I like about teaching grammar is that once you learn some very simple rules, you can apply those rules to so many things. Of course, there are going to be exceptions to the rules, but at the same time, I really think that once you follow some of these most basic rules, your grammar will improve, your communication will improve, your self-confidence in the foreign language will improve. And for me, I've always enjoyed learning the differences in language and how to use it, and knowing that there are some rules that you have to follow, but there are also so many rules that you can break. And that's what's really wonderful about grammar, that you can break a lot of these rules and it still will make sense, and people do it all of the time. But going back, when you have certain rules that you need to follow those rules, but the other ones you can play with the language and have a lot of fun. So I hope that this was very useful for you, and that I hope that you'll join all of the webinars that are offered by us, because they're very exciting and very fun, and sometimes they can even be funny.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much. We got a lot of nice comments. People found your presentation to be very valuable, so thank you for it. We hope that you enjoyed this month's presentation and that you join us next month. Our presenters will be Cindy and Trent. They are also English language fellows in both, Cindy is in Chile and Trent is in Nicaragua. They will be talking about assessment. You can also connect with us if you'd like to join us for future webinars and you'd like to get on our mailing list. You can email us either by responding to the confirmation email you received and contact me directly, or the reloandes@state.gov. We can also put you on the mailing list so that you are informed of future webinars and events. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and all of our webinars are recorded and uploaded to YouTube. So we hope you enjoyed our webinar for this month and that you join us next month when we talk about assessment. So thank you all for joining us, and we will hope to see you next month.